All right, let's kick it off. So, hey everybody, thank you for joining. We are going to run this more like a podcast than a masterclass. So, what I mean by that is Tim and I are going to share some of our most interesting insights that we've learned over the last little while. Then we're going to pause after these grouped insights and do Q&A to get some good questions. So, it's not really going to be video based. It's going to be more like a podcast, just audio. All right, so a little bit about who we are. I'm Julian. I run Demand Curve, and we provide growth training services, and we're also a growth agency. I also write TechCrunch's growth column. I wrote the Julian.com growth marketing guide. My specialties are social ads, landing pages, I would say, and maybe the psychology of conversion. And I used to run marketing at Webflow. And I'll throw to Tim for a quick intro, then we're going to get right into it.
So I previously ran marketing at Espresso, which is a Facebook and Google Ads tool. For the last year, I've been running Demand Curve's growth agency and scaled many of our clients to 6 figures of monthly ad spend or more. I also share my own advertising insights at timchard.com. And Julian, want to go ahead and take it away?
All right, so structure of today's webinar. So the 3 parts are prospecting. So that's targeting brand new people who've never heard of you before. We're going to do retargeting, so targeting people with ads who have heard of you before, and then making ads. So this isn't aimed at newbies. This is aimed somewhere in the middle with some advanced insights thrown in, but you're going to get some good insights you probably wouldn't get elsewhere. We're going to kick it off with prospecting. So again, this is targeting people who've not heard of you. And so when I say targeting, for the sake of this webinar, I'm going to be talking about Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn ads primarily, but this is going to apply almost everywhere. So a big insight that we've acquired for Facebook and Instagram retargeting, and this applies to Snapchat as well, is what we call transitional audiences. So this is how most people think about targeting, and it's not really the right way. They'll say, all right, so I can use Facebook, I can narrow into demographics, I can narrow into interests, or I can use lookalikes. So kind of like big hordes of algorithmically defined people, and that's a feature to Facebook and Instagram. And all 3 of those are kind of saying, I want to carve out a part of the world and then advertise to them. But there's a better way to look at advertising. And this took us a long time to realize. And we call it transitional audiences, which means target people who are in the moment part of a shifting group. Here's an example. Target newlyweds. You're only a newlywed for a short amount of time. Target new parents. Target people who just entered a relationship, who just broke up, who just got married, have an upcoming birthday, just joined a new job, just bought a car. These are all things, these are called behavioral targeting categories you can target on Facebook and Instagram. And if you run your ads around these transitional audiences, meaning they're shifting constantly, right? Because they're time-limited windows, then you never blast and oversaturate the same audience repeatedly for the lifetime of your ads. It also gives you the discipline to make ads that narrowly target people based on what matters to them right now. If you got a new job and your product somehow helps somebody do better at their job, that is a much more enticing wedge in than just blasting everyone on Facebook who likes jobs or whatever that means for some broad value proposition, right? So take advantage of the time-sensitive nature of transitional audiences and know that once you figure out how much money you can spend on that audience, you're good forever. That is the magic of transitional audiences. They're constantly changing, so they're never going to get annoyed because they're going to shift out of the category and brand new people are going to get married, brand new people are going to get jobs. All right, I kind of beat that one into the ground there. So let's move on to something a little bit more interesting. Time of day targeting and day of week targeting are probably the most significant ways to reduce your cost of customer acquisition on Facebook or anywhere else that nobody does. And the reason is it's not a natural feature of Facebook. Like to actually restrict the hours in the day or the days of week that you have a Facebook campaign, you have to do a Facebook time-limited campaign, which almost nobody does. Most people run Facebook ads on an ongoing basis, and so they don't have this feature. And that's a big problem. So you can use a third-party tool like Espresso or Smartly to identify the exact days of week and hours of the day your ads should only run. The reason this is so important is we've been running tests on this for 2 years. If, for example, I'm a B2B company and I'm only running my ads between 9 to 5 p.m. from Monday to Friday versus running it 24/7 throughout the week, my cost of customer acquisition is 30% cheaper if I'm just using that time limited window. 30%. That can make or break ads. That can make or break your profitability. People don't recognize this, so I just want to call attention to this. Facebook will allow you to do what's called a breakdown throughout all of your ad data, and they'll show you which hours of the day, days of the week, your customer acquisition cost and other metrics are the best. But it's your job to use a third-party tool to only run during those best hours once you've accumulated enough data. So this is huge. One more little tweak off of this that's really interesting is we'll take a client like perfectketo.com. They sell keto supplements. And we found from 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. So now we're outside of the B2B space. We're talking about e-commerce consumer products. 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. in the ad viewers time zone. So like relative to EST, relative to PST and elsewhere, was 2.5 times more profitable than outside of that range, which is just crazy. So if I were using an ad scheduler, I might entertain just running ads during that small stretch. Or if I already was so wildly profitable and my margins were already fantastic, I wouldn't care and I would just leave it running the whole time to take advantage of that total volume, as much volume as possible, right? So I have like 5 more insights I'm going to rattle off about prospecting. Then we're going to pause for Q&A. So a quick reminder, you can click the Q&A icon at the bottom of the Zoom bar there and enter your question in the Q&A feature. And Tim's going to go through them and share them with me. Okay, more insights on prospecting, and we're going to move on to retargeting and how to make really good ads. So let's see, what else do I have here? Okay, pixel sharing. This is one of the higher leverage things you can do to make Facebook ads work when they're not, if what your primary problem is an inability to target the right people. And this is usually a problem for highly niche interests. Like maybe it's a brand new thing and Facebook doesn't even let you target by that thing yet. Maybe it's like a brand new trend. Or if you're a B2B company and you're trying to target very firmographically niche companies, which means companies who must have at least 100 employees, who must be in the following verticals. In any case, if you have a very narrow audience and Facebook's interest targeting and lookalike targeting just aren't doing it for you, you can do pixel sharing, which I'll describe in a moment. But first I want to back up and mention, I'm going to primarily be talking about Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn here. And so we're not going to be covering Google Ads in this webinar, but we probably will in a future one. So pixel sharing is this. It's where you, as the owner of, say, demandcurve.com, can go to a friend's company like timchard.com, and I can say to Tim through the Facebook ads interface, I'm going to share my pixel with you, you share yours with mine. And the pixel is referring to the piece of JavaScript code running on our individual websites. So if we allow each other to access that JavaScript snippet, we can cross-target one another's audiences. And the way this solves the problem I mentioned a moment ago is if you can partner with other companies who do attract visitors of your niche, no matter how niche it is, swap pixels and now target all of those people, right? So in practice, however, I've found it really hard to convince anybody to do this with me. Like they have to be literally one of my better friends or a client of mine because of the trust issue. There's no weird thing you can do once you have access to their pixel. All you can do is target their traffic. But it's still, you're divulging your hard-earned traffic, you're sharing with somebody else. So if you have someone close with you who runs another company that has a similar audience overlap, but you're not competitors, that is a great opportunity to do a pixel share. All right, 2 last quick insights on prospecting, then we're going to move on to a new category. Should we cover geo rollouts or should we cover lookalikes? All right, quick note on geo rollouts. This is me trying to sound cool. It's a term I use just to sound smart when I'm talking to clients. And so geo rollout is a fancy way of saying expand your targeting one region at a time. This is why. Let's say you blast all of your targeting in San Francisco versus across all of the United States. If you're just, and you have the same set budget, right? You're spending $1,000 a month, whatever it is. If you're just doing SF, now the individual in SF sees your ad with much greater frequency than somebody throughout the US. Only a tiny fraction will ever see your ad at all. And so if you roll out one city at a time and dominate spend in one geography at a time, you give off the impression as you keep incrementing throughout your overall target geographic space that you're a lot bigger than you are. Because if you're seeing a lot of prospecting ads at a high frequency in a certain region and the people haven't been to your website yet, so they know they're not being retargeted, they're like, wow, these people must be spending a lot of money for me to be seeing this so often. Little do they know you're being sneaky and just blasting one suburb in San Francisco, right? And so this expands to cross-channel retargeting, which is another fancy way of saying showing ads to people beyond one channel. In this case, the channel we're discussing is Facebook. And I should mention, anything I've said so far about Facebook equally applies to Instagram. They're the exact same thing from an ad perspective. You make your ads in the same dashboard. They're owned by the same company. They have the same targeting features. So from a cross-channel perspective, when I'm doing these geo rollouts, this is where it gets pretty interesting. So if I'm blasting people in SF on Facebook, and I'm blasting them with core ads, and I'm blasting them with LinkedIn ads, which are terrible, but we'll get to them in a moment, now they really think I'm the biggest thing in the world. Because now they're like, wow, these people are advertising everywhere. And this is particularly high leverage for companies where social proof is a big obstacle. If you're like a very expensive enterprise product, or maybe a pretty expensive direct-to-consumer product like a mattress or something, these are tactics to give off the impression you are bigger than you are. It's kind of like, credibility by proxy. All right. I'm wondering if I have some more thoughts on prospecting. I'm thinking I should end there to do Q&A. Let's see how many questions we got. All right.
Julian, I'll go ahead and guide this a little bit. We got quite a few. So everyone, I'm going to try to keep questions relevant to what Julian was talking about, which is using ads for prospecting. So one interesting question we have is, how would you determine the best leverage points to focus on getting quote unquote quick wins? And maybe you want to also perhaps critique that philosophy, but that's kind of a common question, like low hanging fruit, quick wins. What are kind of some points you tend to focus on, Julian, when you see an account for the first time?
For sure. So this question differs based on whether I'm coming into an account that already has stuff running or if it's brand new. I'm going to talk as if it's brand new, and I'll give two quick win ideas. The most obvious quick win for ads is to do retargeting. It requires almost no you can be terrible at retargeting and terrible at prospecting. When you're terrible at both, you'll still do a good job at retargeting, usually, where you're just showing ads to people who've already been to your website. If you're not doing that now, then that's low-hanging fruit you're missing. And we're going to get to that in a moment. So that's number one. Number two is what we call the bomb removal approach to targeting. So the quickest way to set up your ads and actually get results is don't come in a priori with all these notions about what's going to do well. You have to have some, like don't go crazy. Don't target babies if you're selling cars. But don't narrow into very specific age ranges and geographies unless you know they actually in fact are the best. So we do this thing called bomb removal, where we start with kind of broad targeting, as broad as is realistic. And then we do something called a breakdown analysis on Facebook or Instagram, where there's a little like button where you can break down all of the demographics, ages, gender, geography, device type, all these variables, right? We break down by every single variable, and we remove all the bombs. So we start broad, break down, and then remove the variables that are performing terribly, where they have way worse performance than everything else. And I'll go in and I'll strip out Android because it's bombing. I'll strip out men because they're bombing. I'll strip out ages 40 and higher. I'll strip out California, Oklahoma, New York because they're just way too expensive. And I keep narrowing and narrowing and narrowing until I'm left with an average cost per customer acquisition that is really good. And then when I'm done, I will go back and resuscitate all of the bombs I'd removed by putting them into their own ad sets, their own targeting groups, and making ads specific to those people to try to reclaim why they weren't performing well in the first place. So if I had to remove the women or men, I would then make ads specific to them in whatever way that means, right? So I'll pause there. There's a lot more, but we'll get into it in a moment.
Thanks, Julian. And let's make this the last question. I've noticed there's a lot of questions about B2B, so I'll combine a few here. And so we had a few questions about LinkedIn and how do you go about targeting specialized services? And really more specifically, how do you go about targeting specific people at B2B companies? So this is, there's a lot online you could read about this. So Julian, I'm not sure if we should just air to that or if you wanted some quick tips on account-based marketing.
Yeah, sure. Let's do this. Let's make this a segue to how we game LinkedIn ads. So LinkedIn ads are terrible, generally speaking. What I mean by that is the cost per click is astronomically high. It can go up to like 45 bucks. And the performance, once people click on a LinkedIn ad and visit your website, is usually terrible, meaning like a fraction will convert compared to social ads like Facebook and Instagram. So generally speaking, we avoid them. But we found a way to finally make them work. It's actually two tricks. The first trick is what we call LinkedIn first retargeting. And here I should back up and explain why would you even use LinkedIn? So to Tim's question, the goal of LinkedIn or the purpose of LinkedIn is that they let you target by super niche firmographics, company profiles, and even individuals at companies, their seniority, their exact job function, how many years they've been there, and on and on and on, which is invaluable for B2B companies. So what we do is we narrow down using LinkedIn all of those individual criteria that we know map to our ideal customer who pays us a lot of money. And we bring in that traffic by running ads as cheaply as we can on LinkedIn, which I'll get to in a moment. And once they click our ads, we pixel them with Facebook. And then we use Facebook retargeting to those LinkedIn audiences to actually get the conversion, to get the purchase. So we don't actually treat LinkedIn as a means of getting conversion. We get it as a means to get those pixels, get those IP addresses and those cookies, and then do the real targeting with with Facebook or Instagram. This is really important because LinkedIn ads don't convert very well. Facebook ads and Instagram ads convert better than anything else on the web, typically, from social ads perspective. So that's how I restructure it. And so my only goal is to get the cheapest clicks possible from the right people on LinkedIn. And the way that I do that is I run text ads. So that these right-hand side text ads, and I set a cap of how much I'm bidding that's very low. And I blast that column of text ads with anything that's clickbaity. I normally never run clickbait ads. It's normally a terrible idea. But in this case, all I want is the click because I've already whitelisted these people as being a firmographic fit because I've targeted them using LinkedIn's awesome business targeting. So all I need to do is pixel track them, which means I bid low, I make something super clickbaity, and then I let Facebook do the real work. So to wrap up, the way I make a clickbaity text ad thing on the side, they call them, I think they're just called LinkedIn text ads, is you put the face of a man or a woman who's good looking and you make it huge, like very zoomed in. It's just a face. And that'll get a much better CTR than your logo or any generic image. So long story short, Tim, for the people who are asking B2B questions, which we can get back to maybe at the end, and we'll do that. And that's going to be primarily the focus of an upcoming webinar for B2B outreach. So we're going to be doing that more so then. It'll cover ads and how ads factor in.
Sure. Julian, do you mind if I hop in real quick?
Yeah, please do.
So guys, a lot of great questions. So don't feel offended if I hit dismiss. It's more so we're just trying to get enough questions so then we can move on to the next section. So we do need to move on to more about retargeting. So Julian, if you wouldn't mind kind of going into retargeting and for the questions, do try to keep them in line to what we're talking about. So in this sense, let's talk about retargeting. And again, if we have time at the end, we'll open up the gates and try to answer as many as possible. But for now, let's try to keep it on topic.
Awesome. And we'll also, if anything is off topic, we can hit them up in the future webinars. So keep them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So yeah, don't feel afraid of doing the questions. And like I said, if it's dismissed, it doesn't mean it's a bad question. I'm just trying to keep things moving and keep things flowing.
All right, cool. Retargeting. So new topic category. As I mentioned, if you're not doing retargeting, there's no good reason to not do retargeting, period. So the real question is, where should you do retargeting? So most people think retargeting is where you just blast Instagram, Facebook ads. That's one part of it. Yes, use Instagram and Facebook as your primary means of retargeting for social ads. But you need to pair that with something that is off Facebook and off of Instagram. Because Facebook and Instagram, they don't run ads off of that platform. And so if you're targeting people who aren't currently are maybe not diehard Facebook, Instagram users, or whatever other situations might arise, you're not actually going to get maximum exposure during retargeting. which is critical because in the first 4 days after someone visits your website, that is the highest conversion period. So most of your retargeting conversions will happen within 4 days of them visiting your website and seeing your retargeting ads. After that, the conversion rate just plummets. And so I'll get back to that in a moment, but here's my point. You want to be everywhere in those 4 days. You want to make sure if someone doesn't check Facebook or Instagram for 4 days that they're still going to see your ad. So Facebook and Instagram is where you start, but you complement it with Criteo. So Criteo is typically not a great ad platform. And it's CRITEO.com. So they offer prospecting and retargeting of their own. And they run ads traditionally as banner ads across the web. In the old days, banner ads bombed. These days, if they're run by Criteo in particular, they can perform pretty well. But the kicker is you don't use Criteo for prospecting, targeting new people. You use Criteo just for retargeting. We've tried this extensively, and prospecting just never works for us, but Criteo retargeting is amazing. So when you pair Criteo off of Facebook retargeting, they're going to run banner ads all across the web, and then you'll take care of Facebook, Instagram retargeting yourself. Now you've covered the entire web, and now you're everywhere. And the last one is LinkedIn. So LinkedIn retargeting is something we do even for Demand Curve. So if you guys go to is Bell Curve or Demand Curve? Yeah, if you guys go to demandcurve.com and then you go to the click on Grow My Company, you're all going to get retargeted by LinkedIn ads tomorrow. And those retargeting ads are running on LinkedIn perform very well for us. So the reason I complement Facebook and Criteo with LinkedIn is because it's nice to be in a B2B context if you're a B2B product. If you're selling supplements or something, don't bother with LinkedIn ads. Okay, so I'd mentioned this 4-day window, right? You got to blast your ad spend proportionally high in those 4 days. Then from day 5 to infinity, taper way off, spend less. This is not only on average going to get you a better cost per customer acquisition, it's also going to avoid people hating you. Because after day 5, if you're still blasting them with a high ad spend, they're going to see your ad at a high frequency, and they're going to click the little thing on Facebook where it says report ad. This is super annoying. Your ad's quality score and relevancy score and whatever the other one is goes down. And your CPMs go higher, so you're paying more for impressions, and then your cost per conversion goes up. So don't annoy people with your brand and be thoughtful about it. Now that 4-day window can be extended for sure. You could do a 30-day, you could pair that with a 30-day window that's a bit more relaxed and then taper off harder after the 30 days. But there should be a hard taper after 4 days typically. I haven't seen this change very much across companies. This in our experience has been fairly universal. So something to chew on there. If you're B2B, let's see, I have a couple notes here. It's important to understand that just because Facebook and Instagram are not B2B channels, so to speak, you don't go there for work per se, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be running B2B ads on those channels. And I'll give you a very specific example that opened my eyes to this phenomenon. Our best performing B2B ad of all time was an Instagram ad for a company selling $50,000 machine learning computers to enterprise companies. And the ad was a picture of a computer, like a mainframe, like a desktop, with doggy ears on it to mimic like the Instagram filters. So we just totally broke the context of business and Instagram, merged them, and it was our best performing ad ever, meaning it made the most money for that B2B company, more so than LinkedIn, right? More so than Facebook and a more traditional ad. So the point is this, humans are humans and they exist everywhere. So people who are B2B companies are also on Instagram all day. So as long as you're pixeling and targeting the right people, that's okay. You don't have to restrain yourself to quote unquote B2B channels. One last thought since I'm on the topic of B2B, then we're going to do a break for a Q&A for this topic of retargeting. So this last thought for B2B folks is when you are doing cold outreach, it can be wise to first do account-based marketing where you kind of whitelist all the companies you want to go for, upload those company names to LinkedIn, run LinkedIn ads against them so they start to become familiar with your brand before you reach out via email. So that when you reach out via email, like, oh, of course I've heard of you guys. I've seen your ads everywhere. And then your likelihood of getting a cold email response is going to go up. So let's pause there. Tim, what do you got?
Sure. I have a question specifically about where is it? The 4-day window, and kind of what do you optimize for? That seems to be a common question. So in other words, do you optimize for add to carts? Do you optimize for purchase? What do you recommend as far as an optimization metric, and have you tested that at all? I have some thoughts as well, Julian, but happy to hear yours.
Sure. All right. Then what I'll do, Tim, is I'll keep my answer quick, and I'm going to throw to you in just a second. So 2 thoughts on how to think about what you're retargeting to. First is, in the first 4 days, I like to be broad. I don't like to narrow in too much because I don't actually know what they're interested in. I mean, I can if I do some special stuff where I segment their behavior on the website, but generally speaking, I'm kind of broad. Like, I'm reminding them that I exist in case they wanted a couple days to chew on things. It's in days like 5 to 30, if I am complementing with a second ad set, that I'll start introducing time-limited pressure. Here's a discount, it's going to expire in a day, right? Or some other offer. Here's a webinar. You only have a day to subscribe. Because I don't start with time-limited pressure, because why give people a deal if they actually were willing to buy, but you just had to wait 2 days and have patience. So that's usually how I think about it in terms of which metric to optimize for. That's actually more of a generic question of like how to optimize for specific conversion events. I'll keep it short by just saying whichever event happens like at least 50 times a week, or maybe at least 25 times a week, but it doesn't really matter. You don't want to over optimize how you target with retargeting, because you don't want to actually limit your audience. You want to blast everyone who's been to your website. That is in fact your goal. So you don't want to let the Facebook algorithm get too tight and only target 10% of it. So I even will retarget I won't even do any optimization on retargeting. Like, I'll optimize for people going back to my web page. Like, that's the event. People visited the page, because I don't want Facebook to limit that audience down. I know these people are primed to buy from me. They just went to my website, and I don't want Facebook restricting that. I'm going to pause there. Tim, what's on your mind?
Oh, I mean, honestly, you just killed it. That pretty much covered it for me, and I'm sure for the attendees. I'd like to transition to another question. There's a lot of people asking about Criteo compared to Google Display Network versus AdRoll, et cetera. Perhaps we could just add a little more insight into how Criteo functions and how it actually does include Google Display Network, and why it's easier to just do all your retargeting on that. Yeah,
great questions. I should have mentioned that earlier. Criteo outperforms Google Display Network retargeting in our experience. It also outperforms AdRoll and Perfect Audience in our experience. Criteo's algorithms are pretty clever. They really optimize for time of day, day of week, engagement patterns, all sorts of things that these other channels don't seem to be doing. And again, this is specifically for retargeting. I'm not comparing Criteo to Google Display Network, or GDN for short, for prospecting. Totally different ballgame. In fact, if I were running banner ads across the web, I would never use Criteo for prospecting. I would only use GDN for banner ad prospecting. So different conversation. But for retargeting, Criteo is better because algorithmically it delivers ads at the right time, so it annoys people less, gets those higher intent clicks more often, and doesn't blow out your audience with annoyance. Also, in my experience, customer acquisition cost is lower with Criteo because of those factors, because of that behavioral tuning. Sorry, Tim, there was one more question buried in there. What was it? I forget what it was.
I think you covered it. Let me see if I'm missing something there. It's just about, no, I think you covered it. It's more so the question about like why it's perhaps easier to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Than through the other platforms.
Well, one secret thing about Criteo is you get assigned account managers who are actually pretty awesome, and they'll figure out the hard stuff for you. So especially if you're not an expert, actually, honestly, retargeting is pretty simple, so you don't have to be an expert. But if you don't have the time, you're not a great expert, Criteo is going to jump in and be an account manager for you for free, which is pretty cool. Let's pause there. So what other QA stuff?
I think that's, well, one, this will be the last question, because I see that I've seen this pop up a bit. And this is kind of similar to retargeting, but it also involves prospecting, and that's about cross-channel attribution. And I can speak firsthand that for Criteo, for instance, while they won't be able to give you cross-channel, they do give you things like, hey, it takes on average 14 days for somebody to buy after they click your ad, and they'll break down all the data for you. So that's another big reason why we like Criteo. But Julian, any insights you'd share about perhaps besides a full-on analytics solution, or maybe we can even mention kind of some tools for that, what the attendees could use for that kind of issue of cross-channel ad attribution?
Yeah, so this is always a huge pain in the butt, and we almost stay away from it for clients because it's just such a nightmare, and attribution is so difficult. Generally speaking, actually, honestly, here's the short answer. Usually we try stuff. We'll use tools like Heap Analytics, Amplitude. We'll use Google or Facebook's own dashboards and all this stuff. At the end of the day, what we try to do is just force surveys on our customers to figure out where they heard of us from, where they heard of us from before they buy. And if we have very high priced products or services, so like if we're going to make thousands of dollars, I'll call them and I will get an accurate, honest answer, because attribution matters. So knowing where you got the purchase from is critical when you're spending a lot of money on leads, like $2,000 in ads to get one company that then pays you $10,000 or whatever. So we don't take any risks, any chances there. For larger, broader stuff, man, it's hard. I don't have a good solution that I can stand by. I would just say, weight your total ad spend very sensibly. So if you know you're blasting Facebook, you know you're blasting Quora, then consider both of those costs when you see a conversion from either one of those channels. And here's how I think about this more specifically. The greatest trick to getting razor sharp attribution when you don't know where people are coming from or why and what they touch before getting to your site is geographic, like zoning. So what that means is if I only run Facebook ads and Quora ads and LinkedIn ads and ads everywhere to just California, let's say, for 2 months, well then I know that anyone coming from California, just for, let's say the company's brand new, it has no traffic, will be brand new eyeballs that my ads are legit responsible for. And all of these random people coming from New York and Delaware, whatever, they came in through referrals, right? Because your ads are only running in one area. So that's how I might even run Facebook on the eastern part of the United States and then Instagram on the western part. And I just have a clear zoned region where I know if you live there, you could have only heard of me from one channel because of the way I've broken out my ads. Tim, let's do one more because I'd rather compress the ads critique time and get another Q&A in.
Yeah, sure. So another common question is, so with these retargeting ads, do you just keep showing the same thing? Do you refresh it? How do you differ it from your prospecting ads?
Oh yeah, great question. So there's two key differentiations when you're retargeting. Ad side, landing page side. If you keep showing the same landing page ad nauseum to people that they saw when they first went to your website, like let's say you're just linking back to your homepage, that's the definition of insanity, right? That's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. What you need to do is introduce a brand new landing page that is drastically different, but still carries the same branding so they know it's you and they feel comfortable. So like a new landing page, let's say your normal homepage is like, yo, here's what we do. Here's a video explainer, value props, how it works, social proof, click through. A retargeting page could be a simple 5-paragraph pitch that ends with a video. And that pitch is concise, easy breezy language explaining the narrative, the story of why what you have is going to help them. That is so different than the homepage, because that's all it is. It's those two things, small text pitch, video, that it stands out. They don't gloss over your page because they just saw it 3 days ago. And now they think, why are you showing me this again? Like I already decided I wasn't interested. This is your chance to give them something new. So use that framework on the landing page side. For the prospecting side, your ads should also be different so they realize you're now pushing something new. They have a new reason to pay attention so they don't reflexively ignore your ads. Specifically, at this point, they probably know who you are. So don't waste time explaining what you are. Start just bullet pointing why you're awesome. That's all you got to do. Like check mark. We're awesome because we save you this much money. Check mark. We're awesome because you get started in 48 hours with us. Check mark. We're awesome because we cost almost nothing, right? And as for the actual ad content, Tim will get to that in a moment. He'll talk about ads.
Sure.
I'll pause there.
Yeah, Julian, I think you actually kind of made it through most, and we do need to move on to talking about the ads to make room for an open Q&A and really that critique. So if it's cool with you, I'll go ahead and take over and kind of talk about the ads themselves.
Awesome.
Okay, cool. All right, so guys, I'm going to talk about ads and kind of creating ads and what that means. And really what I'm going to talk about is try to keep it on a higher level so that it applies to Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Snap, Reddit. These are all channels we've explored, and all in the paid social sphere, there's kind of these common trends that work based on the certain ad types. So a lot of questions earlier were about videos. So to give you an idea of how we do videos, we test basically an MVP, a minimum viable product. And we use this software called Animoto. And we'll either use client-provided footage or even just Shutterstock footage to create a cheap video to test different styles of positioning the product. Now, these positionings can be the following. We'll try testimonial style videos where somebody's just speaking to the camera in their kitchen counter, very, very cheap to produce. We'll test how it works videos where you show a product in action, or perhaps more expensively, a narrated animated explainer video, which, by the way, as much as you think that might kill it, tends to not perform so well. Next, we'll test, if you're a SaaS or B2B company, we highly suggest you test a screen recording video. Again, these are all MVPs, cheap, effective ways. So a screen recording video would be open up your SaaS tool, walk through it with a screen recording. You can even use QuickTime Player, Camtasia, any screen recording tool of your choice, and just kind of go through your major features. And later on, you can apply subtitles. Something basic, something simple, and you can always see how long people watch that video to see if there was any kind of poor parts in your screen recording. And then finally, we also do teaser videos. And these are like 5 to 10-second videos, kind of like stop motion, which might take a little more work for a videographer, but because it's so short, you can still make it quite cost effective. So again, that's testimonials, how it works, screen recordings, and teasers. All right, so that's videos in a nutshell. Feel free to ask questions about that. I'll loop back around afterwards. Next, I want to go into one of my most common tests, which is product versus lifestyle. And I'll test photos and videos in both. And the categories, what I mean by that is a product photo is focused on the product itself. So if it's an e-commerce product, if it's a chocolate bar, it's that the packaging the chocolate bar is in, the calories, everything about it, the nutritional value. It's fully focused on the product. Lifestyle would be, well, how does somebody use that chocolate bar? It's going to be the picture of them at the gym, where the chocolate bar itself, you can hardly see it. You know, it's more about how it helps that person's life. It's a lifestyle photo, a lifestyle video. And we've had vastly different results for even companies in the same categories. For instance, in the food space, we've had it where product photos blew lifestyle photos out of the water. And we've also had the complete opposite of that. So I really suggest you test positioning your product with those two frameworks in mind, product versus lifestyle. All right, next is probably one of my favorite ad types because it works so well. And you can even add this ad type as one of your videos. I didn't mention this type before, and that is comparison or competitor ads, especially when you tie that with a comparison or competitor landing page. So for an example, if you type in Google Asana versus Airtable, you're going to get a landing page that's specifically designed by Asana where they do a takedown of why they are better than Airtable. When you do ads like this and direct them to a landing page like that, it absolutely kills it. So for instance, the reason why it works so well is because people quickly understand what you are when you compare yourself to a well-known competitor. So your ads can just focus on why you're better. You don't have to explain your value props. People see your ad, they see Blue Apron, they know it's a meal delivery service, they know all the benefits. You can jump right into why you're better than them instead of wasting time explaining who and what you are. So also recommend you test this out as a video style because it really is that whole David and Goliath context. And also everybody loves rooting for the underdog. So I do think that's maybe some of the push as well. All right. So we covered video styles. We covered product versus lifestyle. We covered competitor ads. Next, I want to talk about copy. So ad copy, and this more applies to Facebook and Instagram, but also LinkedIn, which is long ad copy and long form landing pages. They are very good when every sentence is interesting. And we actually have and almost always outperform the short stuff, but we follow a specific framework. So we don't just write this boring drab paragraph. We don't just try to write long for the sake of adding details. We always do this. We have a quick opener, something to catch your attention, a medium paragraph, kind of talking more about the narrative, the story, and then a checklist of all the cool stuff that our product or service provides. And it's all very long. You're definitely gonna have to hit that read more button, but it gives the user a full narrative. And the problem with most ads, the reason why most ads fail, is the person who's seeing it doesn't even know why they're being advertised it. And that's why when you do long form ad copy, followed by long form landing pages, why you can kind of paint that picture and help the person understand why they're seeing the ad and why it makes sense for them to buy your product or service. Just take a quick sip. All right, so now I'll get into a quick tip, which is CTAs. So CTAs are like buttons, and they can say learn more, purchase, shop now, etc. We've done multiple tests on this, and they almost always help with CTR. So we do recommend you put it there, even though technically speaking, you don't need a CTA on an ad image for people to click, but it gets that subconscious going and it encourages clicks. And we've backed this up with multiple tests. Similar to that, on images again, and this goes without saying, but just to emphasize, you should test image versus video. On Facebook and Instagram, we've tested square images versus rectangle, and we've been seeing that square images are actually outperforming rectangle. One, that's awesome because it's a new edge, but two, it's also a huge time saver because instead of having to make two different versions of your ad, one for Facebook and one for Instagram, you can make them the same ad and keep targeting Facebook and Instagram in the same ad set because the creative is identical. And again, if you have more questions on that, feel free to shoot them through and we'll cover it after this. I got one more tip, and I know I'm talking kind of fast, but we just want to make sure we pack this webinar with as much value as possible. And that's on social proof. So this is one of my favorite hacks. Everybody kind of knows you can share you can do a post ID and advertise it to aggregate comments and likes and shares. This is a bit different. I recommend you test your ads, you find the hero ad. In other words, you find the ad that's performing best, and then you do this. You send it to your friends. You get all your friends to comment on it, and it adds a ton of positive social proof. Then voila, you now have an evergreen ad. So wait though, don't just launch your ads and annoy your friends and ask them to comment. Wait till you find the one that you think or you can prove is the winner, and then send that to your friends, and you'll definitely see that performance lift up with all that positive social proof and engagement. So that's all for now. So Julian, we'll go ahead and switch through to the Q&A, and feel free to read me some questions or answer them yourself. Just let's open it up.
For sure, we got some good ones. So Elliot asks, in general, which positionings get the best returns for SaaS applications? So this is in regard to copy. For example, should you talk about scarcity, value propositions, fear of missing out? How do you think about making ads for SaaS businesses in particular, Tim?
Oh, that's a good question. I'll probably throw it back to you later too. I would tend to think competitor ads for a SaaS business tends to work really well because there's almost always an entrenched competitor. For instance, like Salesforce or HubSpot. And I would really kind of start, my first thought there is most SaaS companies exist because an existing major solution isn't addressing the problems. That's how I would approach it. But Julian, how would you approach that? What would you think?
Sure, one sec. Just multitasking with this Q&A here. So,
oh yeah.
No, it's all good. So I would say a couple go-to tricks for advertising SaaS products on Facebook and Instagram. By the way, stay tuned, guys. We're going to do live ad critiques. We're going to rip into ads in a moment. How do I think about SaaS advertising? So I would say, one, screen recording video ads, right? Like Tim's alluding to, where you show the product in action. Don't do an animated explainer cartoon thing. It's too removed. Let people see inside of your dashboard. That is what gets people to actually use SaaS software and be like, maybe I will sign up for that. And also, like Tim said, target competitors. And just generally, because you're going to be really boring probably, skip the big pitch and just do check boxes for your individual, most hookiest things you could possibly call attention to. Those are really the tricks. There's not much more that we've seen work reliably for SaaS. All right, Tim, I got another one for you before we get to ads critiques. A couple people would love for you to expand on, earlier you had mentioned video teasers, like 5-second videos. Can you just share what that is as compared to like a fuller length video?
Sure. So a teaser would be kind of like something, a good example would be stop motion. So just something where you have 5 or 6 image frames that kind of display what the product is. So basically, let's say you're selling kids' clothes. You would have a box, and then the box is open. Then the clothes come out of the box, and then the value prop hits, hey, used kids' clothes 50% off. Something simple and effective, but still pleasant to see. And it's that kind of, I don't know if you all have seen Gumby or those old school kind of movies and TV shows, but that kind of style really works well for teasers.
Beautiful. Tim, I'm going to throw you one last question, then I'm going to take over. Let's see here. By the way, this Q&A feature is pretty dope, huh?
Yeah.
Makes it so much easier. I upgraded my Zoom account, everyone, so that I could do this. Okay, let's see here. This is a really good one. Given long B2B sales cycles, or frankly, if you have a long sales cycle for your product in general, are there things you can do to validate the effectiveness of an ad before you lay a lot of money down on it?
Ooh, that is pretty good. Let's see. So long B2B sales cycle before you lay a lot of money. Well, I mean, I don't want to sound patronizing at all, but I would assume like you have customers already, and that I would also perhaps retarget those customers to see what kind of engagement you could get on your ads. But that one's pretty tough because without spending any money on your ads, you can't really assess the product market fit. And that makes it kind of tough for me to assess. Like, I guess we really want to explore other channels outside of ads before that's kind of where this question is going, is how I feel. So
yeah, what you could do is, it's a tough one. Like, you can't ultimately tell whether your ads are going to work unless people buy from you, because the ocean between, oh, hey, they gave me their email address and they bought from me is enormous. People get misled by this all the time. Short answer is there's no good answer for you, but I will say you can look at early indicators. For example, what is the cost of somebody giving you their email if you have an email capture on your landing page? And you can use that intermediary conversion event to measure the relative performance of all your ads, which lead to the best, right? Although it's not really purely an ad-based conversion, it's also your landing page plays a huge portion. So you want to combine those two into like one model of whether people are actually converting. Also, another way to think about this is just limit your audience. So if you have a broad B2B product, choose a niche within it and just advertise to them and see if you can get it working there, and use all the techniques I discussed earlier, zoning, geo rollout, all this stuff, add it together and see if you can narrow in really tight and get them to buy from you. And if so, hopefully you can expand out from there. Hey everyone, that marks the end of the Demand Curve Social Ads webinar. Thank you for listening. And you can go to demandcurve.com to have us train you in growth marketing.